Introduce yourself, your name, what grade you're going into, your age.
Okay. Hello. My name is Kodi. I am age 16 and I'm going into the 12th grade.
I'm Veer. I'm 17. I'll be a senior next year.
My name is Thryambak and I'm going to 10th grade and I'm 14.
My name's Rishi and I'm 18 and I'm going to be a freshman in college this year.
Okay, cool. So today our conversation is going to kind of talk about, toxic masculinity and like the expectations of what a man is supposed to be in society and kind of how that hinders young men, right?
Mm-hmm.
So firstly, I want to ask, what's your definition of toxic masculinity and what traits do you associate with toxic masculinity?
It's just like really strict or narrow social norms that men have to kind of abide by in a certain culture or a society.
I think the first thing I think of is like you have to be strong and like have the whole muscle, and also like providing for a family type stuff, where like you have to be the one who has a job, who's putting food on the table, bringing in like income and stuff. That tends to be what I think of when I think of toxic masculinity.
Like physical strength and like, I don't know, like rejecting your emotions, I guess, like trying to hide them.
Like, I guess in a lot of countries, like men being strong or like feel like physically strong, like being super buff and not like being really skinny is like, I guess, kind of a trait that toxic masculinity promotes. And like not crying or like showing emotion or being able to lean on others for support when you need it and kind of depending on yourself only. So yeah.
When I think of toxic masculinity, the first thing I think of that comes to my head is the way that men are forced to feel and how they are supposed to feel as normal in society. Because the way that the norms have grown over like the past centuries, even if you look at back to just even the Middle Ages when men were doing most of the work in society and women were the one who were stuck at home or taking care of the kids, men were supposed to be seen as like the big tough people who like could do everything that they needed to in order to keep their family alive and keep them healthy. But nowadays, obviously, it doesn't go that way because pretty much both genders can do both equal parts in society today. And there's stay-at-home dads too, stay-at-home moms. So either way, it's a good change, but it's still not enough.
What do you think defines a man culturally? What is a man culturally to you, like in society, not like biologically, not like XY chromosome, like culturally?
Yeah.
What does it mean?
I think, at least for our generation, we're finally at a place, at least in my experience, we're at a place where gender isn't something that like sets those limitations on who you are and like what you can achieve as a person. Like, just in terms of like, for example, like a career, I feel like there's no, obviously it might be easier or harder to get certain jobs depending on your gender, but I feel like those stereotypes and those like limitations don't exist, at least for our generation, anymore.
Yeah.
I feel like everyone's kind of more open-minded about just you can do whatever you want, doesn't really matter.
So you kind of define toxic masculinity, what its traits are, right? So do you think like when people perpetuate those traits, is that harmful to a young man?
Yeah, for sure. Because like, yeah, because from personal experience, like, I think this is something that I've heard a lot of other people have also experienced, especially in like brown or like Asian households, is just this concept of like as a boy you shouldn't cry, for example. It's like for whatever reason crying is a sign of weakness or whatever, and that's like something you should avoid. And that from an early age kind of just put me in this mindset of like I'm not supposed to show emotion, or I'm not supposed to let other people know that I'm not feeling that I'm feeling a certain way, right? Which I feel like did lead to certain like just I was either emotionless or I didn't really care about certain people sometimes. I was
Closed off.
Yeah, closed off. I didn't like talking about my feelings with people. I didn't like getting close to people to a certain extent, to the point where like, yeah, it affects your relationships, it affects your own mental health, it affects like how you perceive yourself. Yeah. I feel like, yeah, the whole toxic masculinity does have an effect especially when it's things like that where it's like, oh, you can't you can't have emotions as a man for whatever reason.
Well, yeah, it is harmful. Well, toxic masculinity kind of like pertains to, I guess, one type of, male, right? Like your stereotypical strong, like burly man
Yeah.
who's like high on testosterone or something, or is like really super strong. But like now, like there's just like a lot of different type of people, right? And you shouldn't necessarily have to force them to, I guess, abide or conform to one social standard that, you know, that is toxic
Yeah.
masculinity.
Yeah, I do think toxic masculinity is harmful because the way it impacts men around the world, not even just like in specific countries, is that it forces them to do things that they wouldn't normally do as their own self. And in their personality, what ends up happening is that it forces them to change who they are. And most of the times for the worse. And it doesn't end up working out for them too well because they go through a ton of different uh, obstacles, even like mental obstacles or physical obstacles. And that just leads to like a dark path in their life.
Yeah, I think it's harmful because like it kind of causes men to like kind of like exaggerate these traits a little bit. Like if you take it too far, then it becomes harmful. Cause like I don't know, take like being physically strong or something. Like if you're going to the gym and you're like skinny and you're trying to lift like 200 pounds, then like not it's harmful to yours. It can be harmful to like the person itself, and it can also be harmful to like society.
Well, the examples I could first think of is like, for example, the image of men being like big and strong and trying to protect their own family and like their own partner too. So the way that gym culture, for example, works into that is that men go to the gym, they put their bodies to like the absolute limits and they push those limits just to try to get the satisfaction of feeling like they're bigger and stronger and they can achieve more. But what comes with that is, for example, body dysmorphia and other like physical harm too, because putting your body through such intense exercises like that can end up bringing permanent damage to your body and your mental health too.
Is there any sort of encounter you've had in your life with direct toxic masculinity or like the standards you need to abide by? Like, can you recall any? If you can't, it's okay, but it can.
Okay, so there's like one, right? So I grew up in like, or I still live with like a really conservative Asian family. Like they're not really open to a lot of the new social ideas or norms that have been normalized in, I guess, in my era, like 2022, 2020, 2021. So I guess one of them was like when I first like painted my nails, right? Like I told him it was a dare by, Kelvin, which is right over here, but like still, like regardless of whether it was a dare or not, well, I still did it like after the dare because I thought, well, I wasn't like, well, they thought I was gay, right? They thought I was like, oh, you're gay? Like my dad asked my mom. I mean, no, my mom asked my dad. She was like, dude, why does Cody have nail polish in his room? Like, is he gay or something? And I was like, no, I'm not gay, but like, I just think that like painting your painting your nails is kind of like, I don't know, cool. This doesn't mean like I'm not like LGBTQ, right?
I was a sensitive kid growing up. Like I would cry a lot at like minor inconveniences. Like that was just something that would happen. And like every time my parents would like say like, oh, don't cry, stop crying, you're a boy, you're not supposed to cry about like this, that kind of stuff, right? So then the biggest thing for me in terms of opening up was just being around friends, and especially like not necessarily female friends, but like just like sensitive friends who would like enjoy hearing about my emotions and enjoy helping me feel heard, you know. So yeah, it opened my mind up to like there's no that stereotype or that limitation doesn't really exist anymore.
I don't think it happens as much like now, but like in elementary school, like I don't know, there were sometimes like I was like sad at school, I guess, but like I tried to like hide it because like I don't know, I just always found like it to be kind of like embarrassing if you like cry at school or something. So like I would just be like, okay, like, I'll just like hide it until I get home or something.
Yeah, and then how did that affect you? The fact that you hid it.
I don't know. I guess it just like prevented me from being able to like show my actual emotions, and I had to like keep it bottled up for longer.
I can't really think of any examples off the top of my head for experiences that I've had, but for example, one of the things I have experienced in my life is that females are usually more emotional than men. So what ends up happening is that men usually end up bottling up their emotions, or they don't open up to as many people as they would be expected to. And that's like one of the reasons that, for example, in the, I think either the United States or the whole world, that suicide rates of the men are much higher than the women, because they don't go out to seek as much help because of the fear of being seen as weak and like emotionally incapable of handling their own like business. So what ends up happening is that females, they usually go out and talk to whoever they want to do about all their problems, and men don't get the opportunity to do that in the fear of being judged. And that's caused a lot of problems in society today. And I see it even in real life when I'm talking to my friends, and for example, if I ever talk to them and they say something like, "Oh, I've never had like someone to talk to," and that just makes me feel worse about like how men are being treated even to this day.
So I did have relatively short hair. I had this weird haircut in 8th grade. Sucked. You remember it sucked, dude. Right?
Come over.
The comb over was so bad. And then, and yeah, like clothes, like the skinny jeans and like the hoodies and everything. Like, yeah, technically that's not anything. Like that's just what guys would wear at school. So that's just what I assumed. Like, oh, guys are supposed to look like this, right? But yeah, I think in high school I was more open to just like that doesn't really exist. There's no sense of like you need to look a certain way. So I started. Yeah, I mean, I grew my hair out. I'll paint my nails for prom. Like, I'll wear some cool clothes, you know.
All right, and then finally to wrap it up, what are some ways we can, as people, including men, maybe when we grow up and have kids or deal with young men, how can we address and kind of soften and deconstruct toxic masculinity? What are some conscious steps we can take to do that?
I think just removing our own prejudice from like, from our own minds, like those limitations on gender. If we don't have those limitations, our kids won't have those limitations. So like, yeah, moving forward, I think obviously each generation is more open-minded than the last, right? So I think slowly we are getting to that point where like gender doesn't have that effect anymore. But yeah, just like being able to like let your own kid develop their own interests and let them be who they are from a young age, and let them show emotions, let them, have their own belief systems, their own emotions, their own interests, whatever, right? And let them develop as human beings themselves, and not force our idea of what they should look like or what they should feel like. Yeah, I mean, like it gets better. Yeah.
Like if somebody's crying, like a man, I wouldn't be like, yeah, stop crying. Like, just be you. Be you.
So I think for the future generations, discussing toxic masculinity is a super important topic. And I would say that it's almost like at that level where it could be talked about in school, not as just like a general topic to talk about for fun 1 or 2 days, but maybe like even a whole unit on it, just to make sure that we can actually spread the awareness of it and bring change. Because there obviously has been change as like society evolves over the years, but clearly it's not enough because people are still going through problems, and it's never going to be perfect, but we should all be doing our best to try to make it as perfect as possible. So talking to our kids and making sure we teach them the right way to handle toxic masculinity and how to avoid getting into those situations in the first place too.
I guess it's just like trying to stop all the like stereotypes that society places on men. I guess just like if like I don't know, it's as simple as like if you see a man like crying or something, like not saying something like suck it up or like man up or something, like, because yeah, that's that.
Alright, thanks, Cody. Alright, that's it.
Yeah.